Elden Ring, the 2022 Game of the Year, has an expansion coming out in June, Shadow of the Erdtree. I personally think Elden Ring is an incredible example of open world play in a video game format. The player embarks on this great quest. You have this singular goal in mind, which is to become the Elden Lord. But how you get there is largely left up to the player. Yes, there are some linear and forced boss fights throughout the game, but there are also several major bosses in the game that are completely optional. For example, the players never have to fight the great Star Scourge Radahn or Melania, Blade of Mikola, if they choose not to. There are 168 bosses in Elden Ring, and the player must defeat exactly 13 of them to become the Elden Lord. That's over 90% of the bosses that are considered completely optional within the game. There's no doubt that Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of Elden Ring and other FromSoft titles like Dark Souls, was influenced by Dungeons and Dragons in the development of his own video games. A Game Informer article noted that they spotted a D&D manual wedged under his monitor when they were interviewing him back in 2015. And from an IGN article around the same time, Miyazaki is quoted as saying, "I've been a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and for them to have come this far is very meaningful to me." It got me wondering, what if we turn the question around? What can we learn from Elden Ring about game design for our D&D sandbox campaign? Hi, welcome back aboard the Earthmote. I'm Randall, and today we're talking about what lessons we can learn from Elden Ring and how to apply them to our own D&D campaigns and game worlds. I think the most apparent element in Elden Ring and other Souls-like games is the difficulty level, or in tabletop terms, a clear lack of balance. The players enter into a dungeon, and there is no carefully balanced amount of minions waiting for them in there. There are a lot of foes, and they can seriously damage you. If you get overwhelmed, you're as good as dead. You will see strong opponents in low-level areas like the Tree Sentinel right at the beginning of Elden Ring. He is beatable if you have a good plan, but otherwise you can sneak by him and come back and fight him later if you so choose. And you'll see weak opponents in late game areas. There are some opponents that are pretty soft, and the players would have no problem hacking their way through them if they so choose. So how do we apply this to our D&D campaign? Well, it's easy enough to implement the idea of weaker opponents in a stronger area or higher level dungeon. Maybe they are henchmen or prisoners, or maybe they're just ignored by the stronger force in the area. These weaker monsters offer a nice change of pace for the party. Even if they aren't fighting them, a group of significantly weaker foes is going to behave differently with the party than the stronger faction in the area certainly would. As for a strong opponent among weak ones, that too has several ways that we can implement into our D&D dungeons and locations. The weak ones could be afraid of the big strong opponent, or the strong one could be the boss of them all, using them as his henchmen. I like the idea of there being a strong opponent in dungeons where the players are lower level. I say let there be a dragon in the dungeon where the players are second level. It gives them something to fear, it gives them something to avoid, but it's also likely to have the best treasure in the whole dungeon. So if they can come up with a clever plan to best it, well, then they'll have this massive payoff, and that's really cool. The players love telling those stories of overwhelming odds where they snatch victory. But they can only do that if you are presenting them with scenarios that give them the possibility to do so. If you want to check out an example of this idea, take a look at Necrotic Gnome's Incandescent Grotto's adventure module. Learning from Elden Ring's lack of balance, I think we don't have to focus too hard on balancing our dungeons or adventure locations. We should instead decide what makes sense for that location and design around that rather than some tight notion of encounter balance for game's sake. If it's a massive bandit camp, then let there be 50 plus bandits there. How the players deal with that is entirely up to them. Let the players explore, and if they find that the dungeon contains too many high-level threats for them, they can learn that and they can make a tactical retreat, and they can come back at a later time when they feel more prepared. If you do go this route of eschewing balance formulas, I would make sure to do at least two things. First, make sure that you're signposting the danger. Let them know that bad things live where they are going to delve. before they encounter any of them if possible, whether that's NPCs sharing that information with them ahead of time or heads on spikes out front of the dungeon. There's a lot of different ways that you could convey that, hey, danger is ahead. Secondly, I'd let them retreat when they're feeling overwhelmed. Obviously, your encounter context is going to change this somewhat, but if they want to retreat, I'm not going to make a big deal out of their escape plans, assuming that there is a semi-clear path for them to get away. Combat isn't the only option, yet in modern systems, it does tend to feel a bit more like the default. But there are plenty of other ways the players can achieve their goals rather than drawing swords. In Elden Ring, we see exactly that. Getting bogged down in combats can become problematic for the Tarnished. You end up using your heals and your resources dwindle long before you face off with the area's boss. In our D&D games, the players might not be headed for a boss fight of any sort, but the resource attrition is a very real threat to them. In an OSR game, you have very low health and few spells to start off with. So if you get into combat, things can start to go south quickly for your adventuring party. Even at higher levels, you can still have combats turn south if you get surprised or a spell goes the wrong way. A lot of different ways the tide can turn quite quickly. In Elden Ring, we see that stealth and avoidance are rewarding strategies. There are a lot of different treasures and rewards that can be obtained without having to fight anyone. You just need to use a combination of stealth or avoidance to get to your target and then retreat quickly from any nearby threats. In D&D, these are completely valid options to utilize as well. Stealth has become such a mainstay in Dungeons and Dragons that in modern editions, we have codified it into a primary skill role that the players can invest into. In older versions of the game, players are always just assumed to be moving stealthily, and the surprise rolls are used to handle the degrees of success the players have against the nearby monsters. As for avoidance, generally you want to stealthily avoid as many threats as possible, but you could run from them if you know they are confined to a specific area or they won't pursue you outside their territory. Avoidance tactics are used all the time in Elden Ring. You run quickly through a dungeon to grab a treasure, or you quickly run through an area avoiding enemy attacks to get to a boss area nearby. You know what you shouldn't avoid though? Hitting the like button if you're enjoying this video. Consider subscribing if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. As a game master designing our dungeons, we can incorporate these elements into our own location. Give the players the opportunity to bypass an entire area. This affords them more choice in their adventuring plan. Make certain monsters territorial, so if the players can retreat from its area, it won't pursue them beyond a certain threshold. Present treasures or rewards to the players as a direct result of their avoidance or stealth schemes. Not everything has to be guarded by warm bodies. Now, one other key element to consider over combat in Dungeons & Dragons is, of course, the opportunity to parlay. Elden Ring as a video game, the players can't talk the tree sentinel into not fighting them, but the players might be able to do that in a D&D game. So keep that in mind in addition to these avoidance and stealth opportunities that we see in Elden Ring. One thing that I love about Elden Ring's open world is that I can go pretty much anywhere I'd like regardless of my level or ability. There are very few places in the lands between that are held behind gated walls. There are a couple spots where you might need to defeat a boss to access, like defeating the fire giant to get to Farum Azula, but for the most part, the world is available to the players. They can go where they'd like and explore what they want. This is great. It lets the players make choices about the world and what they want to see. In our D&D games, we should keep the world open to our players. I think we should be honest and true about what resides in the different areas on our map, but we should not stop the players from entering those areas if they wish. Part of the fun of exploration is getting into difficult or challenging situations. It is in the definition of exploration, after all, traveling to places unknown. I think it's fine to have access to some areas in the world somewhat restricted, but these should be the exception, not the norm. Also make it clear to the players that they can gain access to those areas somehow, like maybe they need to find a portal key or something like that. Well, now they have a goal and something to quest for, so they can continue to explore those areas. Beyond open and restricted, we have secrets, which brings us to our next lesson. Another awesome element of Elden Ring is the depth that is present for players that are willing to delve and explore areas deeply. There are tons of secrets and hidden areas in the lands in between. Some are small areas or rooms in a larger dungeon, whereas others are entire regions or dungeons that are hidden from the player's immediate line of sight. Secrets can make our players feel clever. I feel like there's this whole extra level of excitement when the players uncover a secret door or secret passageway, let alone a secret treasure. That's why I like to include a lot of different secrets in my dungeons and campaigns. It gives my players a lot more opportunities to find them. As for having an entire secret region that the players may never see, like the consecrated snowfields in Elden Ring, I think that's an intriguing idea cautiously. You run the risk of doing a lot of prep work that the players may never see. And while you can recycle that later on, it is still a risk. If and when I do this, I try to offer a lot more hints about these secret areas that have a lot more prep work behind them than I might for a smaller secret like a hidden treasure compartment. That way you increase the likelihood of it being discovered by your players. Which, by the way, I think they'd be massively impressed if you pull out an entire secret region out of your hat like it were some possible throwaway. So the payoff is there, but just be careful and thoughtful on how you're implementing this. I'd hate to see you waste a lot of time on prep work that is never used. We've already talked about signposting somewhat, but this is something that Elden Ring does really well. When it comes to signposting dangers, we can see them often far away in Elden Ring. We can see the dragons roaming the land. We can see the Erd Tree avatars in front of their minor Erd trees. In D&D, signposting danger is providing your players with that information ahead of time so they can make an informed choice about their next plan of action. You can signpost monsters by showing their presence in the area. Same with factions that are ruling over different areas. You can signpost traps by showing grim artifacts of their past history. Speaking of Erd trees, on the exploration aspect of signposting, Elden Ring once again does this really well. They show us places far away that our character might want to go look at and explore further. Erd trees are a shining example of this. But they also make use of different terrain and elevation changes on the map to show us other places worthy of our time. After defeating Godric the Grafted, you emerge on an impressive cliffside overlooking the Liurnia Lakes region of the game world. From here, you can see the massive lake and impressive academy at the heart of it, along with a couple of other distinct points of interest. I think one of the hardest things to describe about Elden Ring, but what makes it such a compelling game, is the overall flavor to it. The world, the themes, the design choices by Miyazaki and the FromSoft game team, it all just meshes so well together. You have this interesting world with these central characters, these demigods that are shells of their former selves. The world just oozes with these themes and tones that present this rich, dark fantasy setting so well. Yet you'll notice at this point, I haven't really said anything about the lore of Elden Ring, and I think that's the beauty of it. There's a ton of lore in Elden Ring and the world setting, but you don't see Miyazaki beating us over the head with all of that information. He's gone in the complete opposite direction of the dreaded lore dump. Feels like if you want to know more about the world, you have to actively seek out different bits and fragments of the history to piece together what's happened in the lands between. So how can we use this in our D&D games? Well, I think if you can get the themes and the tones of your campaign setting right, that can really carry a lot of the work for setting the picture on what your world is all about. I don't think we have to go so far in the direction like Miyazaki did of almost being anti-sharing lore. I think we can have that lore in there if we're interested in it, but we should be considerate on how we're presenting that lore in the world. I'm sure you've heard of the old adage, show, don't tell. Well, Elden Ring does a great job of showing, and we can learn from that in preventing those lore dumps. The other benefit of taking a more fragmented lore approach like Elden Ring is that we can keep our initial preparation at a higher level. But if your players are keen to learn more about a bit or a fragment that you've shared with them, well, then you know what you can work on fleshing out for them in the future. So you're creating this just-in-time model for your historical creation, which can save you a lot of prep time. The only caution here is that the just-in-time model does run the risk of introducing more inconsistencies in your world building. So if you like your lore or history to be cohesive, you might want to develop an outline at the very least, just to kind of have the high level points in order so you don't mix them up as you're developing and sharing out these different fragments. Elden Ring is an incredible display of open world gaming. It utilizes a lot of great techniques and ideas that may have been inspired by D&D through Miyazaki's influences in the first place, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from Elden Ring and reapply those lessons to our own D&D campaigns. I know I'm looking forward to my return to the Lands Between with the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion coming out in June. Let me know in the comments below if Elden Ring or any other video games have influenced how you design your D&D campaigns. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. It really does help the channel out a lot. Thanks for hopping aboard the Earthmote. I'll see you in the next one.